When my daughter-in-law told me that her entire family of 25 people would be spending Christmas at my house, I smiled and said, "Perfect." What she didn't know was that by Christmas morning, she'd lose everything she'd ever bragged about. My name is Evelyn, and I'm 66 years old. I never imagined that kindness could one day turn into a prison, but it did, built by my own family. For 5 long years, I've been treated like a maid in the home my late husband and I built with our own hands. I used to think family was sacred, that love meant sacrifice. But sometimes the more you give, the less they see you as human. It all began the day my son, Daniel, brought home the woman he swore was his soulmate. Her name was Lena. She was beautiful, there's no denying that. All perfect hair and expensive perfume, her smile just a bit too polished, her words dripping with sugar that somehow left a bitter taste in my mouth. From the very first day, I sensed something cold behind her warmth, something that studied people not to know them, but to control them. When they got married, I was happy, truly happy. I wanted my son to have the love I had once known. But within weeks, the cracks began to show. The first time Lena called me Evie instead of Mom, it stung, but I brushed it off. Then came the little commands. "Evelyn, could you make coffee? Evelyn, you missed a spot. Evelyn, could you set the table for us?" At first, I told myself she was nervous, just trying to fit in. But the more she settled into the house, the more she treated it like her own, and me like an employee who came with it. Daniel barely noticed. He worked long hours at his firm, exhausted when he came home, and when he did, Lena made sure he only saw smiles and peace. She played the perfect wife, cooking just enough to impress him, then leaving the dishes and crumbs for me when they went upstairs to watch TV. I didn't complain. I wanted to believe that my patience would earn me love, or at least respect, but all it earned me was invisibility. Then came that Tuesday in December, 5 days before Christmas. I was in the kitchen, kneading dough for cookies, a tradition that used to make my heart warm, remembering how Daniel as a boy would sneak bits of dough when he thought I wasn't looking. I smiled at the memory, but that warmth vanished when I heard the sound of heels clicking across the hallway tiles. Lena never knocked. She entered every room as if it belonged to her, and that day she waltzed in wearing a deep crimson dress, far too glamorous for an afternoon at home. The scent of her perfume filled the kitchen before her voice even did. "Evelyn," she said, flashing a smile that could have frozen water, "I have marvelous news." I kept my hands busy with the dough. "What is it, Lena?" "My entire family is coming to spend Christmas here this year." She said it as if she were announcing we'd won the lottery. I paused, staring at her. "Your family?" "Yes, all 25 of them." I laughed softly, thinking she was joking, but her face didn't move. Her eyes had that sparkle, the kind people get when they know they've just ruined your plans and can't wait to watch you react. 25 people, I repeated. "For how long?" "Oh, just the week," she chirped. "Don't worry, I'll help you plan everything. You know how good I am with decorations. You can handle the cooking and cleaning, of course. It's what you love doing." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was a quiet, deep break, like a tree splitting under ice. For years, I'd bitten my tongue to keep the peace, to protect my son's happiness. But that peace had turned into silence, and that silence had turned me into her servant. I looked at her, the expensive dress, the smug tilt of her head, the arrogance of someone who'd never truly worked a day in her life, and for the first time, I didn't see my daughter-in-law. I saw a stranger standing in the ruins of my self-respect. So, I smiled. I said, "Perfect. I think that's wonderful, Lena." Her smirk widened. She thought she'd won again. But if she looked closely, she might have noticed something in my eyes that wasn't there before. Calm, maybe, but dangerous. She kept talking about her plans, menus, games, how her mother and sisters would need the best rooms, how I could stay in the guest room since you're used to simple things. Every word was another slap I refused to flinch from. When she left, humming some Christmas tune, I stood there for a long time. My hands trembled, not with anger, but with clarity. I realized then that people like Lena don't stop taking until you make them.
That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the photographs on the wall. My husband, Frank, smiling at me from a picture taken decades ago. The kind of man who'd come home covered in sawdust from building furniture, still wrapping his arms around me like I was made of gold. He used to say, "Don't ever let anyone make you small in your own home, Evie." I hadn't listened, but I would now. I opened my phone and looked at the savings account Frank had left me. Lena thought I lived off Daniel's generosity, but the truth was, I'd never touched the money Frank left behind. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give me options and power. The next morning, when Daniel came down for breakfast, he kissed my cheek distractedly, phone in hand, his tie crooked like always. "Morning, Mom." "Morning, sweetheart," I said. "How's work?" "Grown. Busy. Lena's been planning Christmas like it's a royal event. I hope you're okay with it." I smiled faintly. "Of course I am. It'll be a Christmas to remember." He didn't catch the edge in my tone. Maybe he never did. My boy, good-hearted but blind where Lena was concerned. I wanted to be angry at him, but love makes excuses. The next few days, Lena busied herself redecorating every inch of the house. Gold ribbons, fake snow, a massive tree that she made Daniel carry while she supervised. She barked orders, rearranged my furniture, and laughed loudly with her sister on the phone about how the old woman will survive a few extra mouths. I stayed quiet. I cooked when she asked, smiled when she insulted, and nodded when she bragged. But inside me, something had changed. My silence wasn't submission anymore. It was strategy. 2 nights before Christmas, Lena walked into the kitchen again, holding a wine glass and a smug grin. "Evelyn, make sure you prepare something special for Christmas Eve dinner, okay? My family expects nothing but the best." I dried my hands on a towel and met her gaze. "Oh, don't worry, Lena. They'll have a dinner they'll never forget." She blinked, sensing something in my tone, but too arrogant to care. "Good," she said, turning on her heel. When she was gone, I poured myself some tea and sat by the window, watching the snowfall. The world looked peaceful, but my heart was anything but. It wasn't hatred, I felt, not really. It was exhaustion. The exhaustion of a woman who had given everything and been treated like nothing. That night, I didn't sleep. I packed a small suitcase, booked a week's stay at a cozy inn 2 towns over, and scheduled a cleaning service to come the day before Christmas Eve. Not to help Lena, but to prepare my house for what I was planning. By morning, my plan was set. I would give Lena exactly what she wanted and let her discover what it really meant to run a house without the woman she had taken for granted. When the day came, Lena was in the living room arranging gift boxes like a queen setting her throne. I walked in quietly and said, "Lena, I just wanted to tell you, I'm going on vacation. You and your family can do the cooking and cleaning this year. I'm not the maid." Her face went pale, as if she'd seen a ghost. The glass ornament she was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. "What do you mean you're going on vacation?" she stammered. I smiled, picking up my suitcase. Exactly what I said. And with that, I walked out the front door, not knowing that the real surprise was only just beginning. When I closed that front door behind me, I swear I could still hear the stunned silence echoing from inside. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel heavy. It felt light, like the air itself had been waiting for me to reclaim it. I got into the cab and didn't look back. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, tried to make small talk, but I was lost in thought. I stared at the snowfall on the windshield and thought about how it mirrored my life. Quiet, beautiful, and yet so easily buried under cold layers of someone else's world. The inn I booked was a small, family-owned place nestled near a frozen lake. The owner, a sweet woman named Nancy, greeted me with warmth I hadn't felt in years. She said, "You're just in time for our Christmas dinner. No cooking, no cleaning. We do everything for you here." I almost laughed. For once, someone was taking care of me. That first night, I slept deeply. No midnight footsteps, no commands shouted from the hallway, no feeling of being watched or judged in my own home. Just peace. The next morning, I made myself a cup of tea, sat by the fireplace, and imagined what was happening back home. I could picture Lena pacing the kitchen, trying to figure out where everything was. She'd never so much as opened a drawer without me standing nearby. Her perfect manicure would be ruined before noon, and her fake smile would be long gone by nightfall.
And Daniel? My poor boy. I could almost hear his voice. Mom left? What do you mean she left? Of course, I hadn't vanished completely. I'd arranged for the cleaning service to stop by once before Christmas, to tidy the house just enough to make my absence look intentional, not desperate. I wanted them to know I'd planned this. I wanted Lena to understand that I was no longer her background character. I was the one writing the story now. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Dozens of missed calls. Daniel, then Lena, then Daniel again. I let it ring. I wasn't ready to listen yet. But when my phone finally stopped, I scrolled through the messages, a mixture of panic, guilt, and entitlement all at once. Daniel, Mom, what's going on? Lena said you left? You didn't tell me. Lena, Evelyn, this isn't funny. My family's arriving in 2 days. Come back and do your part. Daniel, Mom, please, just come home. She's freaking out. Lena, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this is childish. Childish. That one word made me smile. Funny how people always call it childish when you stop letting them use you. I turned off my phone. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel guilt. I felt free. But freedom, as it turns out, makes people angry. By Christmas Eve morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop again. When I finally turned it on, I had over 50 missed calls and a dozen voicemails. Curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. Lena's voice came through, shrill and cracking at the edges. Evelyn, this is unacceptable. Your son's family is here and we are drowning. The turkey burned, the sink is clogged, and everyone is blaming me. You've ruined Christmas. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. I'd spent years ruining my piece to make sure her Christmases went perfectly. Maybe it was time for balance. Then Daniel's voice came on, tired, frustrated. Mom, I don't know what's going on, but Lena's losing it. Everyone is arguing. Please call me back. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I sat by the window and watched families skating on the frozen lake. Laughter carried through the cold air, pure and real. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed joy that didn't come at someone else's expense. Still, part of me worried. Daniel was my son. No matter what Lena did, I couldn't hate him. He was my boy, my baby, the one I used to tuck in when he had nightmares, the one who'd say, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll always protect you." Somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten that promise. But maybe this was how he'd remember. That evening, just as the sun dipped below the snow-covered trees, I got another call.
This time I answered. "Mom!" Daniel's voice burst through the phone. "Where are you?" I said softly, "At a little inn. You don't have to worry." "Lena's family is here. It's chaos. The food's burned. The kids are crying. The pipes burst this morning. Everyone is asking for you." I let him rant, listening quietly until he finally said what I'd been waiting for. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much you did for us." I closed my eyes. There it was. The crack in his armor, the truth seeping through the noise. "I know, sweetheart, but you had to see it. You had to live a day in my shoes." He sighed, long and heavy. "Lena didn't mean—" "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't make excuses for her. You didn't see how she spoke to me when you weren't around. You didn't notice how she made me feel like a stranger in my own home. I let it happen because I wanted you to be happy. But I can't live like that anymore." There was silence. I could hear the faint chatter in the background, voices raised, someone crying, a baby screaming. Then Daniel said quietly, "You're right." For a moment, that simple sentence broke something open in me. Not anger, relief. "Take care of your guests," I told him. "This is your wife's family. Let her host them. That's what she wanted, right?" He didn't answer right away. "Will you come home tomorrow, please?" "We'll see." And before he could respond, I hung up. That night, I slept with a peace I hadn't known in years. Meanwhile, back at the house, Lena was unraveling. She'd tried to play hostess, but her smile cracked every time someone asked, "Where's Evelyn?" The kitchen was a disaster. The oven smoked. The kids complained about dried turkey. Her mother criticized the decorations, and Daniel, who had always defended her, barely looked at her anymore. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke to find a message from Nancy, the innkeeper. She'd been out running errands and seen something on social media. "Is this your family?" she asked gently, showing me a post from one of Lena's cousins, a video of the Christmas dinner from hell. The video showed chaos, people shouting, someone spilled wine on the tablecloth, a child crying in the background, Lena's voice screaming, "This is your fault, Daniel. She planned this." I couldn't help but laugh softly. I didn't plan the mess. I simply stopped cleaning it up.
That afternoon, I packed my suitcase, ready to return home, but not to surrender. I wanted to face what I'd left behind, not as their maid, but as their equal. When I arrived, the house looked like a battlefield. Plates stacked everywhere, bits of wrapping paper on the floor, the faint smell of burned gravy still hanging in the air. Lena was in the living room, slumped on the couch, her perfect hair a mess, eyes red from crying. Daniel was pacing near the window, silent. When they saw me, Lena jumped up. "Evelyn, how could you? You abandoned us!" I looked around the room slowly, letting the silence stretch. "No, Lena, I stopped being your maid. There's a difference." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Mom, please, it's been a nightmare." I met his eyes. "I'm sure it has." Lena's voice cracked. "You humiliated me in front of my entire family." "Lena," I said calmly, "you did that yourself. All I did was let you be in charge, like you always wanted." She blinked at me, mouth opening, but no words coming out. For once, she had nothing to say. Daniel looked between us, torn, then finally said, "Mom, maybe it's time we make some changes." Changes. That word was music to my ears. I smiled faintly. "That's all I ever wanted, sweetheart." Then I picked up my coat, turned to Lena, and said softly, "Merry Christmas, dear. I hope you enjoyed hosting." And as I walked up the stairs to my room, I felt something shift permanently. I wasn't the maid anymore. I wasn't the quiet mother who stayed out of the way. I was the woman who'd finally remembered her worth. But the story wasn't over yet, not even close. Because while Lena thought this was the end of my rebellion, I was just getting started. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight spilled across my bed, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a guest in my own home. The noise downstairs was faint and awkward. No laughter, no clinking dishes, just the uneasy hush of people who'd run out of ways to pretend everything was fine. I stayed there for a while, watching the dust dance in the light. I thought about how many mornings I'd started the same way, only back then I'd rush downstairs to make coffee, fry eggs, polish Lena's glassware before she even asked. It was like I'd trained myself to wake up to her rhythm instead of my own heartbeat. But not today. When I finally walked downstairs, the scene was almost pitiful. Lena sat at the table in a robe, mascara smeared, her perfect nails chipped. Daniel was on the couch scrolling through his phone with a hollow expression. His in-laws were gone, thank God. What remained was the smell of smoke, spilled wine, and tension that hung in the air like stale perfume. Lena glanced up at me. For a split second, her lips parted like she wanted to speak, to lash out, maybe. But she stopped. She knew she didn't have the ground anymore. "Morning," I said softly, heading straight to the kitchen. I made myself coffee. Just for me. The simplest act, but it felt revolutionary. Daniel finally said, "Mom, can we talk?" I nodded, sitting down across from him. He looked older than he had a week ago. Exhaustion will do that when life stops bending around your comfort. He said, "I was angry at first, but after everything that happened, I get it. You were right. You let her treat you horribly." I watched his hands fidget on the table. He wasn't just guilty. He was ashamed. I said, "You didn't see it, Daniel. You couldn't. She made sure of it." He sighed. "She said she was stressed, that she didn't mean to disrespect you." I replied, "People don't accidentally treat someone like a servant for 5 years." He didn't argue. He just stared at his coffee. Lena shifted uncomfortably. "I made mistakes," she muttered. "But walking out during Christmas? That was cruel." I met her eyes, calm but unwavering. "No, Lena, that was clarity. And sometimes clarity hurts." She looked away, muttering something under her breath. I didn't bother asking what. I'd stopped collecting her excuses. After that morning, the house settled into an awkward silence. For days, we barely spoke. Daniel spent long hours at work again, and Lena tried to act like nothing had changed. But her tone softened. Her commands vanished. Still, I knew her well enough to recognize that submission wasn't apology. It was survival. I could have let things fade into quiet resentment, but I'd learned something important during my days away. Revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it means taking back control so completely that the person who wronged you can never twist it again. So I made a plan. It started small. I took over the finances. Legally, of course. The house was still in my name. My husband had made sure of that before he died. Daniel and Lena had been helping with the bills, but I noticed Lena had been using joint funds for her own luxuries. I spent a few evenings going through bank statements, quietly highlighting her little indulgences. Designer shoes, spa retreats, $1,000 gift to her sister. Then I made an appointment with our family lawyer, Mr. Carver. He'd been Frank's friend, an old man with a dry sense of humor and a shirk mind. When I walked into his office with the folder, he raised an eyebrow. He said,
I'm guessing this isn't about Christmas dinner. I smiled. Not exactly. I just want to make sure my affairs are in order, especially the ownership of the house.
He flipped through the papers. Everything still points to you, Evelyn. You never transferred the deed. I nodded. Good. Then I want to make sure it stays that way. No joint claims, no co-signatures, just me. He chuckled. You always were the smart one. When I left that office, I felt lighter, like I'd locked the final door Lena would ever try to enter. Back home, I began setting boundaries, the way a soldier marks safe ground. I changed the Wi-Fi password, redirected the utilities into my name only, and reorganized the pantry. Each act was small but symbolic. I was reclaiming every inch of my life. Lena noticed, of course. One evening, as I was labeling boxes for storage, she finally snapped, "What's with all this organizing? You act like we're guests here." I turned slowly and looked at her. "Because you are." She blinked, stunned. "This house belongs to me," I said softly, no anger in my voice. "It always has. I let you play hostess. But that's over now. If you want to live here, you'll contribute, respectfully. Otherwise, you and Daniel can find your own place." Her jaw dropped. "You can't just—" "I can. And I just did." She stormed off, slamming the door, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. The sound wasn't scary anymore. It was satisfying. That night, Daniel came to my room, knocking gently. "Mom, Lena's upset." "I imagine she is," I said, looking up from the book I was reading. "She thinks you're trying to push her out." I sighed. "I'm not pushing anyone, Daniel. I'm standing where I should have stood all along. If that feels like being pushed, maybe she's been standing too close to what's mine." He hesitated. "I think she's planning to go stay with her sister for a while. Then maybe some distance will do her good." When he left, I turned off the lamp and lay in the dark, listening to the creaks of the old house. For years, those sounds had reminded me of loneliness. Now they sounded like strength. A week later, Lena packed her things. Daniel helped her quietly, eyes tired, hands heavy. Before she left, she paused at the door, staring at me. "You think you've won," she said bitterly. I smiled. "No, Lena, I think I finally stopped losing." She didn't reply. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed was the sweetest sound I ever heard. Over the next few months, Daniel came by often, sometimes alone, sometimes with groceries or little gifts. He'd eat dinner with me, talk about work, laugh again. Slowly, the fog lifted from his eyes, the one she'd wrapped him in. One evening, as we watched an old movie together, he said, "I wish Dad could see you now." I smiled softly. "I think he can." He looked at me for a long moment. "You really taught her a lesson, didn't you?" I chuckled quietly. "No, Daniel, I just reminded her, and maybe you, that I wasn't made to serve anyone. I was made to live." And that's when it hit me. Revenge hadn't been about hurting her. It had been about finding me again. But fate wasn't quite done yet, because a few months later, Lena came back. Not with apologies, but with a plan of her own. She wanted revenge too, and she had no idea how ready I was for her. I woke up the next morning to the sound of laughter echoing from the living room. It was early, barely 6 a.m., but the house already felt alive with chatter and noise that didn't belong to me. As I slipped on my robe and walked out, I saw Tiffany's mother and 2 of her cousins sitting on my couch, drinking coffee from my favorite mugs. One of them had her feet on my table, scrolling through her phone like she owned the place. And there was Tiffany, giving orders like a queen in her court. "Lydia, don't forget to vacuum before dinner. Mom, can you make sure the kids don't go near the tree? Margaret will handle the cooking." Margaret will handle the cooking. That line hit me like a slap. Her name rolled off her tongue as if I were an employee she tolerated out of pity. I stood there quietly for a moment, watching her talk about me as though I wasn't even in the room. No good morning, no acknowledgement that this was my home. Just entitlement, cold, polished, and cruel. Something in me shifted that morning. Maybe it was the exhaustion that had built up over years of silent submission.
Maybe it was the way she family looked at me, like I was some relic they could ignore. Or maybe it was because I finally realized that I wasn't invisible. I was just letting them treat me that way. I turned around without a word and went back to my room. My hands were trembling, not with fear, but with something I hadn't felt in years: resolve. I sat at the edge of my bed and looked out the window. The snow was falling gently, covering everything in white silence. For a moment, I just breathed. And then I smiled. A small, dangerous smile that only I understood. Tiffany thought she had already won, but she didn't know that her little announcement had just handed me my freedom. I wasn't going to let her destroy another holiday for me. Not this time. Not ever again. I started planning quietly. No drama, no shouting, just cold precision wrapped in calm patience. The first thing I did was book a 7-day Christmas cruise, something I dreamed about for years but never dared to do. I used the savings I had tucked away, money I'd earned from a lifetime of part-time jobs and careful budgeting. The moment that ticket was confirmed, a weight lifted from my chest.
But that wasn't the only part of the plan. I wanted Tiffany to feel what it meant to be in charge of everything, to truly understand what she'd taken for granted. So I started pulling back little by little. I stopped doing the grocery runs. When she asked why there was no milk, I smiled and said, "Oh, I thought you had already bought some for your guests." When she snapped at me for not setting the table properly, I calmly said, "You're the hostess this year, Tiffany. I don't want to steal your spotlight." Her confusion was delicious. She wasn't used to me talking back, even in the gentlest way. Then I started moving my things. Small, careful steps so no one would notice. My jewelry box, my important documents, the photo albums of my husband and me. I packed them neatly in my suitcase, hidden under some folded sweaters. Every time I zipped that bag, it felt like I was sealing away another piece of pain. By the time Christmas Eve rolled around, the house looked like a festival. Lights everywhere, music blaring, laughter filling every corner. Tiffany's family had truly taken over. But instead of feeling bitter, I felt strangely calm. I moved through the chaos like a ghost, smiling politely, offering tea to guests who barely acknowledged me. Tiffany strutted through the house in her glittering green dress, giving orders like she was running a company. "Margaret, don't forget to baste the turkey," she said, waving her wine glass in my direction. I looked her dead in the eye and replied softly, "Oh, I won't be here for dinner." The room went silent for a second, as if someone had just cut the music. She blinked, not sure if she heard me right. "What do you mean you won't be here?" I smiled, slow and steady. "Exactly what I said. I'm going on vacation. The house is all yours. Enjoy hosting your 25 guests." Her face drained of color. She said, "Oh, you can't be serious." She trembled with forced laughter. "Margaret, this is your house. You can't just leave." I picked up my travel bag and my coat from the chair. "Oh, I can. And I am. Merry Christmas, Tiffany." The silence that followed was the sweetest music I'd heard in years. I could feel every pair of eyes on me. Confused, shocked, maybe even impressed. Tiffany's mother gasped. Her cousins exchanged awkward looks. And Kevin, my son, he just stood there, caught between his wife and his mother, his mouth half open, unsure what to say. But I didn't wait for him to speak. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the crisp winter air. The snow crunched under my boots, the cold biting at my cheeks. But for the first time in years, I felt warm inside. Still, revenge wasn't complete yet. As the taxi pulled away from the house, I took out my phone and sent Kevin a message. "The bills are in your name now. The cleaning service was canceled. The food delivery stopped. Good luck hosting." I turned off my phone right after that.
The next morning, as the cruise ship sailed into the open ocean, I stood on the deck, sipping my coffee. The horizon stretched endlessly before me, blue, calm, and full of possibilities. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't cooking, cleaning, or teetoing around someone's mood. I was just me. But I knew Tiffany too well. I knew she wouldn't take this humiliation quietly, and that was exactly what I wanted. Because every message she sent, every call she made, every moment she panicked would only prove one thing. She wasn't in control anymore. I was. I could almost imagine the chaos back home. Guests arriving to an unprepared house. No food, no clean dishes, no plan. Tiffany scrambling to hold it all together while pretending she had everything under control. And Kevin finally seeing his wife for who she really was. For years, I had been the quiet one, the helper, the forgotten woman in the corner. But now, I was the storm that upended everything. And the best part? I didn't even have to raise my voice to do it. The first few days on the cruise felt like waking up from a long, dark sleep. I remember standing on the deck one morning, watching the sunrise spill gold across the water, and for a brief moment, I felt tears sting my eyes. Not from sadness, but from relief. I hadn't realized how heavy the silence of my old life had become, how every sigh, every forced smile had built a wall around me. Out here, the air was fresh, untainted by bitterness. I was free, and for the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone an explanation for it. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what was happening back home. I didn't check my phone for 3 days. When I finally did, the screen lit up like fireworks. 22 missed calls from Kevin, 17 from Tiffany, and countless messages. My lips curved in a knowing smile. I took a deep breath, opened the first one, and began to read. "Mom, where did you go?" Kevin wrote. "You can't just disappear like that. Tiffany is freaking out." The next one came from Tiffany. Her words were sharp, desperate, and poorly disguised behind her usual arrogance. "This isn't funny, Margaret. You can't just leave us like this. The food delivery didn't come. Your cleaning lady isn't answering. Everyone's looking at me like I'm incompetent. You've embarrassed me in front of my family." Embarrassed her. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. For years, I had been humiliated in my own home, dismissed, ordered around, reduced to a servant. And the first time I did something for myself, it was her turn to feel small. I let the phone drop onto the bed and lay back, staring at the ceiling. The ship hummed softly beneath me, the sound of the waves steady and calm, like a lullaby. I didn't reply to a single message. Not that day, not the next. I spent my time meeting new people, enjoying quiet dinners, and dancing under the stars with strangers who didn't know my name or my story. And somehow, that made it easier to breathe. One evening, I met an older woman named Joan. She had kind eyes and a laugh that filled the air like music. She told me she, too, had once lived her life for others. A husband who never appreciated her, children who took her for granted. "You did the right thing," Joan said, her voice gentle but firm. "There's a difference between kindness and servitude. You taught them the difference." Her words settled in my heart like an anchor. For so long, I'd believed that being selfless was noble, that love meant sacrifice. But now I saw it clearly. Real love doesn't erase you. When the ship returned to port a week later, I felt stronger, lighter. The moment I stepped off, I turned my phone back on. There were more messages waiting, but one in particular caught my eye. It was from Kevin. "Mom, please come home. We need to talk." Something in his tone felt different. Not angry, not defensive, just sincere.
I took a long breath and decided to face whatever awaited me. When the taxi pulled up to my house, the sight before me almost made me laugh. The front yard looked like a battlefield. Heaps of garbage bags by the curb, Christmas decorations tangled and broken, and a half-dead wreath hanging crooked on the door. I opened it slowly, half expecting the chaos to spill out. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burnt something. Turkey, maybe? The living room was a mess of unwashed dishes, torn wrapping paper, and scattered clothes. And there, sitting on the couch, with her hair in disarray and dark circles under her eyes, was Tiffany. When she looked up and saw me, she froze. For a moment, she didn't say a word. Then she stood up quickly, trying to gather herself, smoothing her wrinkled blouse as if to pretend everything was fine. "You came back," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I set my bag down gently and met her gaze. "I did." Her lips quivered. "You had no right to leave me like that. Do you know what I went through? My family?" I raised a hand, and she fell silent. "Your family?" I said softly. "You mean the people you invited into my house, the people you expected me to serve like a maid?" Her face turned pale. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." I interrupted. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried enough power to make her step back. "You've treated me like a servant for years. You forgot whose roof you were living under. You forgot who took care of Kevin when you were too busy criticizing me. And this Christmas, you finally saw what happens when I stop being your safety net." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I had shed enough tears for both of us. Kevin came down the stairs just then, his expression heavy with guilt. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how much we were taking from you." I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, loved, and defended, even when he didn't deserve it. And for a moment, my heart softened. I said, "You didn't see it because I didn't let you. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would keep the peace. But silence doesn't build peace. It builds resentment." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "I understand now. Things are going to change." I glanced at Tiffany, who stood trembling beside him. Maybe she understood too. Or maybe she just feared what would happen if she didn't. Either way, I didn't need an apology from her. Some people learn best from the weight of their own consequences. In the following weeks, things did change. Slowly, but noticeably. Tiffany no longer barked orders. She cleaned up after herself. She started asking instead of demanding. The house grew quiet again, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was peaceful. I spent my mornings reading by the window, my afternoons tending the garden, and my evenings walking through the snow-covered streets. Sometimes Kevin would join me, carrying 2 cups of tea the same way he used to when he was little. Those moments healed something in me I thought was lost forever. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the lights flicker across the neighborhood, Kevin turned to me and said, "You know, Mom, that cruise, it might have saved all of us." I smiled softly. Maybe it did. Because the truth was, revenge wasn't about destroying someone else's life. It was about reclaiming your own. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I didn't seek to humiliate anyone. I simply walked away and let the silence speak for myself. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer of all. So if you're listening to my story and wondering what you would have done in my shoes, I'll tell you this. You don't always need to burn bridges to set yourself free. Sometimes you just need to stop carrying people across them. And as I sat there, the soft hum of the evening filling the air, I realized something. I didn't just win, I healed. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.